Hi guys, welcome back to Thursday Top Lessons. This week we are going to discuss a very important topic, ego. There are a lot of definitions of ego, but Ryan Holiday in this book, Ego is the Enemy, talks about a version that sits inside our heads and impedes our growth. So here it goes. So, who is this book for? This is for the entire human race. The key takeaways from this video for you guys would be what is ego and its characteristics. If you are a beginner, how does it impact you? If you're already successful, how does that impact you? And if you have failed in certain attempts in your life, how does ego impact you? And finally, how do we save ourselves from this ego? So, what is the ego that we are talking about? The ego we see most commonly goes by a very casual definition, an unhealthy belief in our own importance. It is like a very self centered ambition. The need to be better than, more than, or recognized for any past utility. That is ego. So, what are the characteristics of this ego? The egotist does not stumble about, knocking things off his desk. He does not stammer or drool. Instead, he becomes more and more arrogant. And some people, not knowing what is under that attitude, mistake his or her arrogance for a sense of power or self confidence. With success comes the temptation to tell oneself a story, to simply round off the edges, to cut your lucky breaks and add a certain mythology to it. It's a temptation that exists for everyone, for talk and hype to replace action. That empty box that we see on our social media, what's on your mind? What are your thoughts? Is waiting to be filled with thoughts and stories. Technology is asking you, prodding you, and soliciting talk is acting as a facilitator of this temptation. We want to so desperately believe that those who have great empires set out to build one. Why? Because we can indulge in the pleasure of planning of ours. Setting up narratives for ourselves deviates us from the action. All of us unthinkingly say yes to a lot of things and occasions out of vague attraction, greed, or vanity. Because we can't say no as we might miss out on something. FOMO. Ego leads to this envy that rots the bones of people big and small. Now you might be thinking, I am just a beginner, I have aspirations in life. How does ego that you talked about impact me? For a generation, parents and teachers have focused on building up everyone's self esteem. All gurus or public speakers have been almost exclusively aimed at inspiring, encouraging, and assuring us that we can do whatever we set our mind to. Ryan Holiday packs a punch here. He says, in reality, this makes us weak. We take it for granted that everyone has promise, but talent is only the starting point. Will you be your own worst enemy? This leads to something the author calls the passion paradox. Passion, for people who don't start, is deliberately blunting their cognitive functions, and the waste is often appalling in retrospect. Even dogs have a passion, ask a toy. But fortunately, it has a very graciously short term memory that keeps at bay the creeping sense of futility and impotence. What we humans require in our ascent is purpose and realism. Purpose is like passion with boundaries, realism is detachment and perspective. Passion is it's about something. Perspective is to and for, it leads to action. Actually, purpose de emphasizes the I. Passion is form over function. Purpose is function, function, and function. So, as a beginner, when you are starting out, it is important to remember these fundamental realities. You're not really as good or as important as you think you are. You have an attitude that needs to be adjusted. Most of what you learned in books or schools is out of date or wrong. Accept that fact. But at the same time, it's not about kissing ass. It's about providing support to others so that they can be good. Greatness comes from humble beginnings. It comes from grunt work. If you're already successful or you think you are sort of in your mid career, you might feel I'm already successful and have reached a certain level in life. I'm pretty sure I'm past all that now. How does it even matter to me now? Remember, whom the gods wish to destroy, they first call promising. The first thing God does bestow upon whom he wants to annihilate is pride. Pride leads to arrogance and then away from humility and connection with their fellow man. Pride blunts the very tool we need to succeed, our mind. Genghis Khan was the greatest conqueror the world ever knew because he was more open to learning than anyone else. He learned and absorbed from all the cultures he raided. The technique of splitting your army into smaller units came from Turkic tribes. The concept of walled cities came from Tango trades, and he would not be able to grow and sustain had he not applied those learnings. With success and particularly power come some of the greatest and the most dangerous delusions: entitlement, control, and paranoia. In this section, we'll talk to someone who feels that I've already failed in my venture and I know what it feels like. How does that even matter to me now? You see, adversity gives you a chance. Most trouble is temporary. Recovery is not grand, it's one step in front of the other. As Raghuram Rajan mentioned, sustained mini bangs as opposed to one big bang. If your reputation cannot absorb a few blows, it wasn't worth anything in the first place then. If ego is just a nasty side effect of great success, it can be fatal during failure. The future bears down upon each of us with all the hazards of the unknown. The only way out is through. In this section, we'll answer that okay, I've got all the three stages of ego: aspiration, success, and failure. How is there a way out? How do I keep it at bay? First and foremost, detachment is sort of a natural antidote to ego. It's easy to be emotionally attached to yourself and your work. Any narcissist can do that. Detachment is key. Next, become a student. The power of being a student is not just that it is an extended period of instruction. It also imposes an ego ceiling that he or she is not better than the master he or she apprentices under. An easy way to do this is follow a technique by Frank Shamrock, an MMA trainer. The technique goes by a plus. That means always keep someone who you feel is superior than you and can teach you. A minus, someone whom you can teach and give back. And an equal, have someone with whom you can compete with. This beats the ego by a plus, fear by a minus, and complacency or laziness by an equal to. Help others and let it accumulate. Next point is to work, work, and work. To be both a craftsman and an artist. To cultivate a product of labor and industry instead of just a product in the mind. It is here we trade thinking and talking with working. A freshly promoted soldier must learn the art of politics, the salesman the art of managing, the founder how to delegate, the writer how to edit others, and the comedian to try and act now. It is important to sit down and think what's important to you and then take steps to forsake the rest. Without this, success won't be pleasurable or nearly as complete as it should be, especially money. If we don't know how much we want, the default answer is more. Ego needs honor in order to be validated. Confidence, on the other hand, is able to wait and focus on the task at hand regardless of external recognition. Beware of the disease of me and seek confidence, which comes from excellence. Winning is not enough. Anyone can get lucky and win, but not everyone is the best possible version of themselves. It's no surprise that great leaders went into wilderness and came back with inspiration, a plan, with an experience that puts them on course to change the world. Silencing the noise around, they could finally hear the voice they needed to. Meditate, seek calmness, get that inner self to tell you what's really important. Finally, sobriety is the counterweight that must balance out success. Most successful people do not even reach the limelight because that's the way they wanted it always. To close, the bottom line is we must be humble in our aspirations, gracious in our successes, and resilient in failure.